got now Mason Jones, the Manufacturing Digital Manager at Chevron Phillips, to give us his insight and his experience and tell his story up here. So welcome, Mason.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So like Dominic said, so my name is Mason Jones. I'm the Manufacturing Digital Manager. What that means is I'm responsible for prioritization, implementation, and then the value delivery around our manufacturing digital solutions. So work for a company called Chevron Phillips. I want to give a little background here. So we're a joint venture between Chevron and Phillips 66, primarily focused on ethylene and polyethylene production, based in the US in Houston, Texas. So I will say, if you hear me say y'all, y'all means you all, so all of you. So that'll probably slip out at some point, so just know I'm based in Houston. But the background around CP Chem, so started in a joint venture in 2000. The reason I share this, we've got 31 manufacturing and research facilities worldwide. Coming from those two different joint venture backgrounds, very different philosophies and how we implemented IT solutions, work processes, business processes, even all the way through to different organizational structures. Now, a little bit on the background as well before I get into talking about our operator solutions. We are fortunate enough to have Wi-Fi in all of our manufacturing facilities domestically, and then coupled with our global operations, either private LTE or Band 48 across those facilities. So we have the fortunate connectivity across those facilities and operations. With that, we've got about 2,500 mobile devices in use between operations, maintenance, and the rest of our workforce supporting that connected worker. Now, with some of those benefits, we do have some challenges. So the purpose of today's discussion is around our operator round solution. And we have a legacy digital solution today, so a number of our facilities were collecting electronic data in a operator round solution. However, it was a very inconsistent approach. So how we actually looked to implement these across each of our facilities was very different. A lot of that stemming from the legacy of the company. We also didn't have any connection between those work processes. So we collected operations data in an operator round solution. We made reliability decisions completely separately based off of instrumented data that we had on that side. Didn't really have a lot of connection between the work processes on the operations side and maintenance and reliability. We didn't have a great way to maintain this data either for the life of the equipment. So as you look at the differences between functional location versus the actual equipment that may be moving around between those functional locations, we didn't have a way to track the data through the entirety of that equipment, no matter where it was. And then lastly, we reported very much in silos. So each one of these operator round solutions was its own instance with its own server, its own reports, all completely separate across the organization. And it was very difficult to get insights or data outside of these solutions. So I'm going to share a little bit about our connected worker journey and where we were headed to set the stage for how this ties into operator rounds. So you'll see here at the beginning, it really sets off with what we're trying to do from being able to collect information. And then a number of our connected round solutions is really how do we provide access to make better, faster decisions. So you'll see a number of these other solutions that we're looking at. How do we tie electronic permit to work? How do we tie being able to contact an SME or information toward what we've learned from that operator round solution? And then connecting the operations and maintenance aspect. So as we prepare that permit, as we prepare for that time to work, how do we let maintenance know that it's actually time to start to be able to do their job? From the EHS&S side, how do we tie in training qualifications? So qualifications that they've taken either as a contractor or as an in-house CP Chem employee. And then tying that to the hazards and control of work on the job site, as well as inventory management. From an inspection side, we're looking at how to take this beyond just how we do inspections today, but how do we support drone and autonomous inspections going forward. And then how do we get that information to the right people to make better and faster decisions, whether that's in the control room during a shift turnover, or in a board level or management meeting. So that's our vision. It's a very lofty vision, and we have a long way to go from that connected workforce approach. Again, the purpose of this focus is around operator rounds, so I just wanted to set the stage as to the vision of where we're headed as a company. Really fits within 5 C's. So how do we connect the information that we've got? So from an asset information management side, how do we holistically collect that information so we can access all of our process safety information, key operating and engineering information in one spot? Then how do we subsequently collect additional information we need associated with those assets? And this is where that operator round data and information really plays into what you're doing from an APM perspective and equipment health monitoring. Using all of that data then, how do we collaborate and move from more of a preventative to predictive type solution? Looking at our APM solutions and then how we better support shift turnover. And then ultimately, if something needs to be addressed, how do we correct that information? And if we're doing all of that correctly, then all we're doing is controlling and looking at how we can optimize that process going forward. So this is the journey that we're on. I'm going to dive a little more now into that collect piece, so the operator round solution. Our digital operator round solution, when we started, we went out to our different facilities and asked them, what does good look like? So what does good look like from an operator going out and collecting information? I got a lot of stares back, and not a lot of people were able to give me a good answer to that. We looked at our parent companies and what they had as well, and really what it came down to was 3 different areas. So the compliance side, so whether it be environmental, health, safety, sustainability, security, more of your task-driven, time-based tasks. The competence side, which is getting operators out into the unit, making sure they're familiar with the unit, using their senses to understand how that unit is operating. And then the reliability side. So how do we drive better reliability performance and equipment health going forward? And the purpose of the rest of this discussion is really on that reliability side. And what we saw today was we were really looking at more of a time-based solution. Here are the tasks that I need an operator to do, and here's the frequency that I need for them to accomplish it. And it never really changed from there. So if I looked at something once a shift, once an hour, once a week, it was really a time-based type round. Where we're trying to drive to is, could we use reliability-driven insights to update and support the frequency or priority at which an operator looked at some of these tasks in the field? And then can we use that data that we learned from the operations side to feed that information back into an APM solution for equipment health monitoring? And this is really how we started to drive from more of your preventative and time-based to predictive, and how we can use insights between 2 different work groups. So what this looks like from the operations side, they're feeding the tour round and data information, as well as if we missed a reading. So from a compliance aspect, if we're taking credit for a specific task on that compliance side, we need to understand, was that completed or was it not? So we're feeding that information from operations over to our reliability folks. Reliability then is looking at equipment health and monitoring, and then along with a number of instrumented data and sensor data as well. And then out of that, we're gleaming from where are the high-risk areas that we may need to do something different. So how can we adjust what operations is doing to either collect something more frequently, or it's a lower risk activity and maybe we don't need to collect something as frequent, so we can give some time back to the operations personnel. So we're feeding back those priority changes and frequency changes. And really what that's driving then to is also condition-based dispatches. So it may be something that an operator is not currently looking at on a round, but they need to. So we can drive that information from reliability now to operations. And we're working with a SAP partner, Innovaptive, to actually collect this information for these operator rounds. And they're outside there, so if you're interested in knowing more on what that looks like, they're helping to drive our mobile solution to take this information and ingest it into SAP. So what did we get out of this? So ultimately, at the end of the day, was really the better collaboration between operations and reliability. So what that brought was optimized operator time collecting information. So I may not need to look at something as frequently, give some time back. I can focus areas in the high priority areas that I need to be driving toward. Also brought better data availability. So before I mentioned it was siloed, operations, reliability. We didn't look at any of the data from the operations side on some of those reliability decisions in real time. They may have looked at it if they saw an issue or identified a problem elsewhere, but it wasn't part of that real-time decision making for the health of the equipment. So overall, with both of those, what that drives toward is a reduction in downtime. We can find items quicker, make better decisions, collect more data if we need to make a more informed decision. And then from our compliance and then environmental health, safety, and sustainability side, a reduction in our reporting and analytics. So while we were maintaining completely siloed approaches for those reports, now we were able to quickly and more efficiently provide what are the anomalies or discrepancies that they had that was collected as a part of those operator rounds to be able to drive decision making from that aspect as well. Something as simple from a missed fire extinguisher inspection that was done on a monthly basis, all the way to more of the sustainability diesel generator type aspects that we're looking at as well. So that's a high-level overview of what we're looking at from the round solution. So I do want to open it up if anybody has any questions. And I will mention as well, so my background is in chemical engineering, so I'm on the business side. So if we get too technical, I might have to point you towards someone else.
So any questions? We've got a mic ready for you, so if there are any questions. While you're thinking about questions, what's next on your journey? You've done rounds management. What's the next piece of the puzzle for you as a project?
Yeah, so we started with the preventative piece, so time-based. We're working on more of the predictive, so how do we get this collaboration between the two? What we'd ultimately like to get it to is how do we take that up to a prescriptive level? So can we not only predict where there's an anomaly or where there's an issue occurring, but can we actually prescribe to the operator what the steps to take are? So in that solution as well, we can do very simple safe operating limits. So I've hit either a high or low safe operating limit. We're now trying to drive down into some of those reliability operating limits and environmental operating limits as well.
I have a couple of quick questions for you. When you talk about optimized time, how much are we talking about? That's one. And the second one is, aside from that time element, are there any other benefits that Chevron Phillips is seeing, especially around maybe errors, things in that line?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So what we were originally targeting was about 5 to 10%. Some of that was just the composition of what was in the round today. So as we went back and took a look at what was in the round, we had some things that didn't fit within one of those three areas, the compliance, reliability, or competence. So we were able to remove some out as we were migrating systems. The other piece as well is as we looked at that prioritization and frequency effort, we may not have to be looking at something quite as frequently. So we were shooting for about 10%. And then the second part of your question
was around if you're seeing any other benefits aside from that time component.
Yeah, so one big piece on that reduction in downtime, previously our SAP, our operations folks had to call over the radio to a shift supervisor or another individual to enter a SAP notification or manually track those SAP notifications as a part of their shift turnover log. What we've tried to do with this now is to integrate all that together into one pane of glass, so the operator can directly take a photo, find the functional location piece of equipment, and put that SAP notification in directly, and then that will also show up on the shift turnover log. So from our operations and maintenance coordinators, they were spending hours going back to a shift turnover log of, okay, what do I have reported here versus what actually got put into SAP. So now all of that's brought together into one seamless workflow. And then the other piece, shift turnover. So if you look at every one of those chemical safety boards, national safety boards, any of the issues and incidents that you have, a lot of them tie back to MOCs, permits, and shift turnover. So being able to integrate our shift turnover process together, and that's something that we're still working on within Evaptive, is how do we integrate what that shift turnover process looks like, and pulling information from our operator rounds, as well as other outside systems. So SAP work orders and notifications, and then our permitting system.
Another question? There you go.
No, thank you very much. So just wondering about the 2,500 plus devices that you have. How do you manage, or how did you manage intrinsic safety with those devices? Are they normal devices? Did you have to get them customized to be able to use them in the plant?
We use Android devices because they're one of the few on the market today that are a Class 1 Div 2. So it is a Class 1 Div 2 certified device. We use both the phone size as well as a larger 7-inch tablet and 10-inch tablet in the field. I know a number of other companies are iOS versus Android. We're primarily Android just on how we can manage that mobility for the application and that certification. They are off the shelf, but we have to buy them specifically, the certified ones. So they've got the stamp on it for the Class 1 Div 2.
Any other additional questions? Yep, one at the back. Keeps me busy and healthy.
Yeah, good day. I was just wondering how you went about modeling your rounds in SAP. So you're sending an inspector or a technician out into the field, and you want him to, or him or her to, gather particular measurements about each of the pieces of equipment that are on that round. I was just wondering what mechanism in SAP you use to manage that individual round.
That's a good question and another good point to bring up. So our rounds previously had no tie to equipment or asset information at all. So that completely siloed data and information over there. So as we look to implement this solution, we really tied it to the functional location and asset hierarchy. And that in Evaptive solution, we're able to pull in and store based off of the equipment and that asset information.
So you could store a subset of the particular measurements that you wanted to gather for a particular round?
Specific tasks to measurements and readings.
And that's stored outside of SAP or is using an object within SAP?
Well, you can do it either way. We chose to choose an application database, so it'll be stored outside, and then some of those key measurement and readings would be stored within SAP.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good question. Any others? Well, oh, yep. Go for it.
Thanks. On the first value you indicated there, can you throw more light?
To elaborate on it?
Yeah. Elaborate on the first one.
Yes. So the operator time for collecting data, what I mentioned was we're also looking at now how can we change priorities and frequencies based on what we're learning from the reliability information. So if we're finding vibration trending up and we need to look at other areas that operators collect on rotating equipment, instrumentation, electrical, we can increase the frequencies of those readings. And then conversely, you can also decrease the frequency or prioritization of readings. So some of the benefit that we're getting is the decreased time where I don't have to have an operator look at this every shift. I may need to look at them every 2 or 3 shifts. It's not physically possible for me to overfill this vessel in the next 4 hours. It would take 36 hours based on the current level conditions. Can I look at this 12 hours or 24 hours later instead of every 4? Okay.
So thank you, Mason, very much for sharing your story. It's always fascinating to hear it from the business side. It was fantastic. So we're going to have a short 5-7-minute break now before the final session of the block of 3 ahead of the full-on break. So take a moment, step, move your heart a little bit, and come back in a few minutes. Thank you very much.